Good morning. Today on Behind the Gavel with Jason, we'll talk about how to package and care for and move your antiques and collectibles so they get to where they're going safely and they get unpacked safely as well. My name is Jason Roski. I'm the own the KC Auction and Appraisal Company here in Kansas City, Missouri. Thank you all so much for watching the show today. We come on to you every Friday morning here on Facebook Live to talk about different things, the antiques, art, estate business, and things that we think are important to those who we work with, work for, and questions we get asked regularly from folks. And so this last week I did two appraisal events, one for the Clay County Museum, the Historical Society up in Liberty, and then I did a private event for a insurance company last night where they invited some of their better customers to come in and have me look at antiques for them and give them an idea what they had, what they're worth, and just as a fun thing for them to bring as a gift to their patrons, their customers. And I always have a lot of fun doing those events, but I'm always curious, astounded, and shocked sometimes to see how people package their antiques to bring them across town to have somebody look at them. And in fact, last night, somebody almost broke an antique doll because they had done what they thought was a good job of packing, but there were some things there that they probably shouldn't have done. And we'll talk about that today. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is some things that you should not do. And it's interesting, I was looking online to see what other kinds of ideas people had about packaging antiques. And one of the things I kept talking about regularly was using tape to secure the packaging. And I will tell you that I think that is one of the worst ideas ever. It can work, but I will tell you what, this is a hot mess. This is a client brought a bunch of stuff in, looked just like this. Everything was packed really, really tight, and then tape was wrapped around it, because to make sure that it didn't come apart. And I'll tell you, we have broken things because of the tape. Last night, a lady brought in an antique doll, and she almost broke it because she had taped her packing material around the head of the doll, and in her effort to remove it, almost dropped the doll because she had to apply so much exertion on so much force on the tape and the packing material that she almost lost control of the doll, and it was a China head doll. It is smashed and broken into 100 pieces. So why do people think you need to use tape? It makes sense. You want to keep the packing material securely attached or around the object you're transporting. I understand that completely. There's a much better way to handle that situation. So I'm going to show you a couple things how we would pack it, how you should pack it. We'll start with this nice little vintage Fiesta vase. And we like to use, basically, they're diapers. You can buy these at a lot of different places, but they're really good. They're soft. They're absorbent. If there is any moisture, it'll help keep the moisture off, especially the backside. And they're uniform. It's easy to figure out. Once you start using them, it's easy to understand how to use them in the future. So I see a lot of people take a vase like this and they shove into the center because that makes sense. And then they kind of do all this, and then they take tape and make sure that it all stays in place. It usually works, but I'll tell you that's not a very good option or solution. We take the piece and we start at an angle in the corner, and we set the piece at across the corner. Then we roll it down a little bit, and we fold across, roll again, fold across, a lot like wrapping a Christmas gift, and roll it up. And this piece is now completely secure and safe for transportation. Now, what you put this in is going to make a difference too. And we would suggest for this, just a grocery sack in your car, secured. So the thing that happens, the thing that damages antiques and collectibles when you're moving them is not the packing or the lack thereof, it's the movement after you've packed it, right? So if you have several things, you want to find a box or a container that's the appropriate size for what you're moving. If you have an 18-inch square box, you put this in there, no matter how much packing you put around this vase, it's going to move around, right? So you want to make sure that you have it stabilized. Stabilization of whatever you're moving is key to safely and securely moving it across country, across town, or even to your basement if you need to. So let me do another piece here, a little bit different. Little antique Chinese pewter ginger jar has a lid. So what do we suggest about lids? So this one is a little different because it actually kind of locks in place. It stays in place. But let's say that it didn't. It was a piece of glass. There are a couple of ways that I can't get it out. A couple of things that we suggest for that. One is you take that same piece of packing material, put the lid in such as this, do a half a turn, and then kind of place it into the right location. It won't fit now, but then you can do the same kind of roll and fold and such as this. And again, your entire piece is protected. And once this is secure inside of a box or against other objects, that friction, that tension will keep the packing material where it needs to be. You don't need any tape, and this is as securely packaged as it needs to be to get wherever you need it to go. Again, it's not about securing it to the object, it's about the entire packaging process. Let me show a couple of other things here. You can always package this separately, and we use all kinds of different materials. Paper towels work great for something like this. It's a small size. It also, if you're removing lids from packaging, it's oftentimes better to use something that's a different color. This is obviously white. This material is blue. So when you go to unpack that box, you know that the lids are going to be in the white material. The smaller material, you put that in the box, then you wrap the jar on its own. And again, roll and fold. You have them both packed separately, but you know that this is a lid for something, and that's the jar if you use color-coordinated packing materials. So that's a really great little tip to keep in mind when you're doing that. You can also, package just like this and put it inside that when you wrap it up to keep them together. Oftentimes it's hard to keep items together. And if you have a bunch of, let's say, you have crystal decanters that all have similar stoppers in the same box, it's really sometimes challenging to figure out which stopper goes to which bottle. So it might make sense then to make sure that you wrap the bottle and the stopper together. Wrap them separately, but wrap them together as well, like we just talked about. Again, so when you unpack it, it's easier to reassemble the decanter or the perfume bottle or whatever it might be. The other thing you want to keep in mind is if you're unpacking yourself, it's easier to pack because you don't have to worry about how that person is going to unpack it. But if you're packing it up and sending it to somebody, it might make sense to have some instructions or take pictures of what you're doing so that when they get it to unpack it, they think, oh, they have this here and that there, or they taped it, or they put that inside of something else. Because it makes sense to you, but it may not make sense to the other person. Thanks a lot for watching, Ricky. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. So what about jewelry and small objects? I got this, gold ring here, little bronze painted pieces that are super small, right? I mean, these are really tiny things. And if you're packing for a move, you need to how do you keep those pieces distinguished and separate, safe, and findable again when you get to your destination? So again, using the right size materials, we use Kleenex oftentimes for a piece like this, a little bronze gold painted piece. And again, just wrap, fold, roll. Again, full coverage, and when you get done, you have a nice little package, but that's going to get lost in a box of any size, right? So how do you make that stand out in your packaging once you get to where you're going to go? We use Ziplocs a lot. We'll take things like this and put it inside of a Ziploc. Again, the Ziploc itself will protect it, but it's also going to be a bigger piece inside of a larger box. So you can put several pieces in here, and it's easier to find them all together. And if they're all packaged like this inside of here, they're all safe from each other. And then you put them inside this Ziploc, inside of a bigger box. They're safe from each other. They're safe from everything else in the box. And they're easy to find when you get to your location. Again, packaging and moving is not hard, but you just want to think about it a little bit. When you're transporting artwork, let's say, some of the best things to protect artwork is just plain sheets of cardboard stacked between the objects and then securing the art against the wall, either with bungee straps, ropes, or if you have furniture as well, slide the furniture up against it, wrap that in the blanket like a piece of pottery, slide it up against the picture so nothing moves. We get pieces sent to us all the time. This was an actual shipment. A painting came to us in this cardboard through FedEx. They put it in here, they sealed it up, make sure it was secure, see all the layers of cardboard? That gave stability, but it also protected it from other items in transportation so that it wouldn't rub against the pieces next to it. Again, packing, moving, and transporting antiques and furniture and artwork is not hard. Just want to have a plan. You want to understand what could happen, why would something get damaged, how would something get damaged, and what steps can you take to mitigate that exposure. If you don't have a lot of packing material for artwork, putting pictures face to face and back to back so that the hanging hardware doesn't scratch the face or the frames of the other pieces is a good idea. It really does work well. And I've moved hundreds of pictures without any packing material, face to face, back to back, got them all the way across town, across state, and had no damage because there was no movement and they didn't have protrusions. They didn't have hard things sticking out that could rub against it, scrape, crack glass, those kinds of things. When you're putting, let's say you have the 1970s artwork in the metal frames that was very common and prolific back then, they had a tendency to twist really easily. And any twist can snap and crack the glass. So you want to make sure that you're laying those things or standing them on edge. Moving artwork on edge is much better than laying flat. You have much less exposure of something falling through it, which obviously would not be a good thing. Standing on edge, you have much less visible surface, much less exposed surface for damage to happen. So standing on edge, but make sure that what you're standing it on is level. If you're trying to put something across the back seat of your car, and you've got the hump in the center, if you have a rear-wheel drive car, and you've got the hump in the center of the car, you got to be careful with that because that's going to angle whatever you put down. You got the hump here, and you put this piece of picture, and it's going to be like this. It's going to be angled, and so you put a strange twist and pressure on different points of your picture. So make sure that you're aware of that. It can be done, but make sure that you take that into account. Also, make sure you can close the door before you close the door. I've seen this happen more than once where somebody gets something, oh, thank God, they go to close the door, and all of a sudden they've got the corners damaged on a Victorian frame. So you want to make sure that when you're closing things in, stabilizing the load, that you don't have things protruding further than you expect, and then when you go to close the door, roll up the window, whatever it might be, you have the space to safely do that because nobody wants to damage something at that point. No one wants to damage anything anytime. So just, again, it's not challenging, it's not difficult. I'm looking for anything else laying around. Just want to think about stabilization, protection, and movement. Really, the movement is the biggest factor. You could take the most delicate porcelain piece in the world, and if you can secure it without pressure on those exposed ends and not have things moving against it, it's going to travel thousands of miles completely safely. So think about what you're moving and why, and then think about the unpacking when you get to where you're going. Again, tape can be effective. It can also be very, very damaging because that tape going on has to come off somehow or another. And if you put on too much tape or rubber bands, I saw people put things up with rubber bands. Well, that is a lot of pressure on a very small area, and on fragile pieces that will snap. Leaves on a flower or fingers on a vase. I've also seen over time, if you have a rubber band around newspaper especially, that the combination, they can react with each other, the rubber in the rubber band, the ink in the newspaper, all of a sudden you got a black band where that piece was so firmly attached to the object. So we try and completely avoid newspaper. The ink in the newspaper is very, very, it transfers easily, and so it will stain and damage pieces very easily. So we always look for clean newsprint paper, the same quality paper, but clean, not printed. You can buy that at any U-Haul or office supply store in rolls, oftentimes, or in big sheets that make wrapping things easily. Or like I showed you before, the diapers that are easily found too. They're selling in pet stores for doggy training, cat training. But they work really, really well because they have some depth to them. They'll support, and they will separate objects in transport. And then again, on smaller items, wrap them up in tissue, put them in a Ziploc, and so that you have that, they're safe and secure without movement. Again, movement is the biggest factor in moving anything, whether it's a diamond ring or a big French brake front. Anytime you can stabilize it so that it doesn't move, you're going to increase your odds of safely transporting it drastically. If it can move at all, that's when damage will happen. Thank you all so much for watching. It's right at noon. It's a beautiful day here in Kansas City. Fall is finally upon us. Took our boys to the pumpkin patch down in Lewisburg last week and had a great time. hopefully you're getting to enjoy the fall weather where you're at. I just talked to my mom in Minnesota today, and they have had snow up there already this year. So it's winter is shortly around the corner, but hopefully you get to enjoy fall where you're at for a while. If you have any questions you'd like us to answer, go ahead and post them here. Send us a direct message or give us a phone call at 816-283-3633. You can always send us an email, info@kcauctioncompany.com, info@letter C, auction company, spelled out.com. You can always send us messages there, post messages here on Facebook and YouTube down below. You can ask us questions anywhere. We love to answer questions directly from our viewers and our friends and family because it's just something we like to do. So thanks again for watching. We have a great auction going online next week, but thanks for watching. Have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.